It's hard to find a silver lining in the story of the COVID-19 pandemic, but Dr. Bob Luebke has identified one. He writes about it in a two-part John Locke Foundation research brief. Bob is senior fellow at the Center for Effective Education at the Locke Foundation. And your silver lining is the growing popularity of school choice. This is something that we really have seen during the pandemic, haven't we?
Yes, if there are any good things to come out of the pandemic, and I think that list is probably pretty short, but one of them is the growing popularity of school choice. Unfortunately, it took a pandemic to highlight a lot of these things for people, but choice is growing, and its popularity is through the roof in a lot of places right now, simply because parents have realized they don't have much in the way of good educational options, and they have found out that they need additional choice options, to get their child in a school that fits them.
Early in the first part of your research brief, you mentioned that the year 2020 was terrible for education and that it really damaged the trust and reliability of our institutions. That in and of itself pushes people to look for new options, and that in and of itself would turn people towards school choice.
Yes, I think what the pandemic did is it showed a lot of people that unfortunately teachers and administrators don't always act in the best interests of children. I think a lot of people came to that conclusion when they were talking about schools that have been closed a long time, when a lot of parents see that private schools have been open and that they've learned to move forward during a pandemic. And that caused a lot of questions in people's minds.
This has happened in North Carolina, but also in states across the country. One of the pieces of your research brief is looking at some of the major developments in other states. A lot of states have seen this growth.
Yes, over the last year, Mitch, school choice programs have expanded in a lot of areas. I think we know that West Virginia has gotten a lot of publicity on passing a new ESA program, which will provide families $4,600 per child will be put in an ESA for each child, and that program is almost universal for all kids in the state. So that's really exciting. That's going to be the first statewide ESA program. But other states, there's 7 states now, including North Carolina, that have ESA programs, but existing states have expanded their programs. Other programs like tax credit scholarships that a number of states have expanded those, and voucher programs, which have always been popular. Indiana expanded their program now, and I think it'll be the second largest next to Florida as far as the number of recipients.
Another important piece of your research is a reminder that a January 2021 Civitas poll found that basically 82% of respondents, 4 out of 5 people, agreed with the statement parents should have the ability to determine where their child attends school. I mean, that fits right in with this theme that school choice is popular.
Yes, Mitch, that's really important because a lot of times when we poll on school choice, we'll poll on the idea itself of it, as well as, the existing programs and how people feel about the programs. And throughout the time that I've been there, familiar with the Civitas polling, the idea of choice, should a parent be able to determine how and where their child is educated? That has always been a very strong number, high 70s, low 80s, consistently.
One of the things that you point out after spelling out how choice has played out in states across the country is you talk about some of the legislation in North Carolina that has been filed or could be filed to help deal with this. What are we looking at this year in North Carolina?
Good question, Mitch. There are a number of bills that are currently in play now to expand choice options. In the House, there's HB 32, which is the Equity and Opportunity Act. And in the Senate, there's an equivalent bill, SB 671. Both of those programs revise provisions in the three existing school choice programs. The major ones the major provision in each of them is to change up how the voucher program, the Opportunity Scholarship Program, is funded. As you know, that program has been around since about 2014, and it provides up to $4,200, for eligible recipients to attend a private school. Unfortunately, since that time, that amount hasn't been updated. The House bill changes that number and ties it to a percentage of the state per pupil appropriation. So in other words, it would change the $4,200 to about 80% of the state per pupil appropriation. The Senate bill changes that to about 90%. So I imagine some of those differences hopefully will be worked out and they'll agree on a final bill. But those are some of the major provisions.
In the second part of your research brief, you also look at some other things that could be done. One of them, legislation to address learning loss. It would your target is something you and I have talked about before, and that is some sort of education savings account tied to learning loss.
Yeah, we're still hopeful for that, Mitch. We believe, even though the House and the Senate passed and Governor Cooper signed the summer learning plan, which will go into effect this summer, we don't believe that that's going to be sufficient. It'll help, but there's still going to be a lot of problems with kids because they're all over the map academically, and we believe that they'll need additional help. What's the best option for that? I think there's been a consensus on the research that individualized tutoring helps significantly. That's been shown in a lot of the research. And what we're advocating is a plan to provide an ESA for families starting out at $500 each, and then hopefully expand that a little bit more. But we believe that would provide parents the opportunity to address the individualized academic needs of their children.
You also mentioned that some of the action taking place in Washington, D.C. could end up leading to benefits for choice. Even if the feds are spending a bunch of money, at least some of it might go to something that would help parents.
Yeah, that's right. The big last federal aid bill for COVID relief, the American Rescue Plan that President Biden signed in March, contained a child income tax credit that was expanded significantly this year for up to $3,600 for children up to age 6 and children 7 to 17 up to $3,000. That money can be significant, for families looking for additional money to help, pay the difference, for a private school or other educational options. That can be significant. It goes away a year from now, but there is some sentiment in Congress to see about possibly extending that because it can be very helpful.
If you'd like to learn much more, you can go to johnlocke.org and find the pair of research briefs, Part 1 and Part 2 of The Pandemic's Silver Lining, The Growing Popularity of School Choice. The author is Dr. Bob Luebke. He is Senior Fellow at the Center for Effective Education. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Mitch.